Welcome to Veil Revenge. What happens when the very people meant to protect you are the ones who break you down? The floor was cold against my cheek, tile and dust pressing into my skin like grit against an open wound. My scalp burned where his hand had wrenched my hair moments ago, the sting pulsing like a brand. I didn't scream this time. I had learned screaming only fed him, only made his eyes burn brighter. Above me, laughter cut the air. Not nervous, not guilty. My sister, Lydia, clutched her phone, as if she were recording a comedy skit. Not her sibling sprawled on the floor like discarded trash. Pathetic, she hissed under her breath, her grin unshaken. My father's breath thundered above me, ragged and furious. Thomas Bennett was a storm that never tried to hide. You never listen, always running your mouth. This is what you get, he snarled, his grip tightening around strands of my hair. And then someone else stepped into the room. Dr. Adrian Cole, our neighbor and the town's only physician, had come by after my mother made a passing comment about me being difficult again. He entered with a polite smile. The kind people wear when they don't yet know the weight of the rooms they're about to walk into. That smile faltered the second his eyes landed on me. On the raw red handprint spreading across my cheek. On the strands of my hair still knotted in my father's fist. His hands froze mid-air as though he'd walked into the wrong play. This. His voice cracked thin, uncertain, but real. He saw. He couldn't unsee. Lydia's laughter cut short, suddenly brittle. My father straightened, pasting on his oily charm. She's dramatic. Always has been. Kids these days, you know how they are. She'll be fine. But Dr. Cole didn't nod, didn't smile. His gaze darted once to me, then down to the phone. In his pocket. His hand twitched, hovering with hesitation. And then he made a choice. He pulled it out, for the first time in years. Someone looked at my father, not with fear, not with deference, but with suspicion. The silence shifted, thick and suffocating. My father's voice cracked sharp, like glass breaking. What the hell do you think you're doing? Dr. Cole didn't flinch. His thumb slid across the phone screen, a faint glow lighting his face. His voice was steady now, calm and deliberate. Yes, I need to report suspected child abuse. Immediate intervention required. Time slowed. My father's rage froze, balanced precariously between denial and exposure. Lydia's smirk drained away, her world cracking in places she couldn't laugh through. And me flat on the cold floor. Blood rushing in my ears. I felt something I had never known in this house before. Hope the moment, shattered quickly after. My father's face twisted, torn between fury and confusion. He took a step toward Dr. Cole, but then stopped. Remembering fists couldn't erase a phone call already made. Lydia shifted uneasily, her arms folding tightly across her chest as if she could disappear into the wallpaper. Dr. Cole's voice remained steady as he relayed the details. Yes, a minor. Yes, she's bleeding. I'll stay until someone arrives. His eyes flicked down at me, clinical, clear, not pitying. He knew exactly what he was looking at. My father barked out a laugh, brittle and hollow. She's lying. She probably tripped. Clumsy girl, always has been. But even his words seemed weak to his own ears. His hand was still tangled with strands of my hair, a receipt of violence he couldn't discard. He finally let them fall, as though pretending could erase evidence. I pushed myself up slowly, legs trembling, but spine straight. Years of surviving had taught me never to show weakness in front of him. But tonight felt different. Tonight, there was a witness. You're making a scene, Dad, Lydia muttered, but the conviction was gone. For once, she wasn't laughing. Along she was shrinking, uncertain. Dr. Cole crouched beside me, careful not to touch, but tilting my face toward the light. His voice dropped low, words meant only for me. "You're safe," he whispered. The words didn't feel real. Not yet. Headlights cut across the curtains. A car door slammed outside. Heavy boots struck the porch. My father's head whipped toward the window. "You called the cops." His voice cracked with disbelief. Dr. Cole stood taller. His presence, suddenly, larger than my father's looming shadow. "I called someone who listens," he said firmly. The front door swung open. 2 officers entered. Officer Samuel Grant and Officer Ethan Ward, their radios crackling, their movements brisk. My father puffed up, bellowing about rights and family discipline, but the words fell flat. His kingdom was crumbling. One officer crouched near me, his tone gentle. "What's your name? How old are you? Do you feel safe here?" My throat closed. For years, silence had been my armor. But silence no longer belonged to me. "I don't feel safe," I whispered, and with those for words, the house shifted. The walls that had always carried his voice suddenly carried mine. The officer nodded, pen scratching on paper louder than my father's fists against the wall. "Thank you for telling us," he said softly. My father roared, "She's lying. She's spoiled, ungrateful. I gave her food, a roof, this is how she repays me." But this time, no one believed him, and for the first time, neither did I. The weeks that followed the police intervention felt like living on a tightrope. My father, Thomas Bennett, was quieter, but not because guilt weighed him down. No, he was calculating, always waiting for the right moment to strike. Lydia, my younger sister, shadowed his moods like a reflection in a broken mirror, quick to mimic his anger, quicker still to cast me as the enemy. I tried to hold myself together. I had moved temporarily into a spare room at Dr. Adrian Cole's house, just next door. He insisted, saying no one deserved to feel unsafe in their own home. His kindness was something I wasn't used to. Most adults in my life had looked the other way, convinced that my father's booming laughter and false charm were signs of a loving parent. But Adrian saw through him. He had seen the bruises, the fear that lingered in my eyes. He didn't need proof was written all over me. One evening, as I sipped tea at Adrian's kitchen table, he asked gently, "Clara, have you thought about taking legal steps? A restraining order, maybe even a case?" The thought made my stomach twist. Taking my father to court felt like throwing a lit match into a field of dry grass. "I don't know," I whispered. "If I do that, it won't just be me he'll come after. Lydia's still under his roof." Adrian sighed, his eyes heavy with something that looked like sorrow. "You can't keep bleeding just to protect people who cut you open, Clara. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stop the cycle." I didn't answer. The truth was, fear still had its claws in me. But then the letter arrived. It was late on a Monday afternoon. A manila envelope slipped under Adrian's door, addressed to me in my father's sharp, angry handwriting. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was a stack of papers, legal threats, accusations, lies spun into something sharp enough to pierce. He was suing me. For defamation, for emotional harm, for daring to speak about what he had done. I dropped the papers onto the table, my throat dry. Lydia's signature was there too. Her handwriting looped at the bottom of a false statement swearing that I had made everything up. My own sister, testifying against me. Something in me cracked then, not just from betrayal, but from the realization that silence had never been protection. My silence had only fed his power. And now, he was weaponizing my own blood against me. The days leading up to the first hearing were a blur. Adrian found me a lawyer, a calm, steady woman named Rebecca Hayes, who looked me in the eye and promised, "We'll fight this. Truth has a way of standing tall, even when people try to bury it." The courtroom itself was colder than I imagined, both in temperature and in spirit. My father sat across from me in a dark suit, his face arranged into an expression of righteous indignation. Lydia clung to his side, eyes darting toward me once, then away as if my very existence burned. When the judge, Margaret Doyle, entered, the room straightened. She was known for her sharp fairness, and her gaze swept the courtroom like a blade. My father's lawyer launched into a performance, painting him as a misunderstood man whose ungrateful daughter had twisted reality for attention. Each word felt like acid on my skin. When it was my turn, my heart pounded so hard I thought it might split my ribs. Rebecca placed her hand briefly on mine before standing. She guided me through questions, gentle but firm, helping me tell my story without crumbling. For the first time, I spoke about the night he nearly broke the door down, about the threats whispered in the dark, about Lydia's rehearsed lies, fed to her like poison. At one point, Judge Doyle stopped me. "Ms. Bennett," she said, her voice softer than I expected, "take a breath, you're safe here." Safe. The word echoed inside me. Adrian testified as well. He recounted what he had seen: my bruises, my fear, the nights he heard yelling through the walls. His voice never wavered. Unlike me, he wasn't afraid of Thomas. The hardest part, though, was Lydia's testimony. Watching her walk to the stand, my chest ached with memories, braiding her hair before school, sneaking cookies late at night, laughing at silly inside jokes. But when she opened her mouth, her words sliced through me. "She lies," Lydia said firmly. "Clara always exaggerates. My father has never hurt us. She just wants attention." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled, fingers twisting in her lap. I saw the truth slip out in her body language, even as her mouth betrayed me. When the session ended that day, I stumbled outside into the heavy air, tears threatening to break. Adrian caught up with me. "You held your ground," he said gently. "That's more than most could do." "I don't feel strong," I admitted. He shook his head. "Strength isn't about not breaking, Clara. It's about getting back up when you do." That night, lying awake in Adrian's spare room, I thought about everything: my father's rage, Lydia's betrayal, the courtroom's cold echo, and slowly, something shifted inside me. For years, I had been surviving. But now, I realized I had a choice: survival or defiance. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop surviving and start fighting. The second day in court felt heavier than the first. It was as though the walls themselves had absorbed the tension, carrying the weight of every whispered accusation and swallowed sob. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my palms damp against the cool wood, my eyes locked on the door as my father walked in. Thomas Bennett looked calm, confident, even smug. He adjusted his tie, as though he were about to receive an award, not answer for years of cruelty. Lydia trailed behind him, pale and rigid, her face unreadable. For a moment, her eyes flicked toward me. There was something, their hesitation, a flicker of guilt. But then she looked away, folding herself neatly back into his shadow. Rebecca, my lawyer, leaned close. "Remember, Clara. Facts. Truth. Don't let him drag you into his storm." But storms were all my father knew. The proceedings began with more testimonies. My father's coworkers, people who had only ever seen his polished mask, described him as generous, charming, the kind of man you could count on. Each word felt like another stone piled on my chest. I wanted to scream, "You don't know him. You've never been behind closed doors with him." But I sat still, nails biting into my palms. Then it was my turn again. Rebecca guided me through a timeline-specific incidents. The bruises I had hidden under sweaters. The nights I slept on the floor by my locked bedroom door. I could hear Lydia shift uncomfortably as I spoke, but she never lifted her eyes. The hardest question came from Judge Doyle herself. "Ms. Bennett, why did you remain silent for so long? Why come forward now?" The room went still. My throat tightened, but I forced the words out, because I thought if I stayed quiet, he wouldn't hurt anyone else. I thought silence would protect my sister, but silence only made him stronger. And now, he's using her against me. If I don't speak, the cycle will never end. The judge studied me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded for the hearing to continue. When my father took the stand, I felt every muscle in my body tense. He leaned forward, voice smooth, convincing. "My daughter has always been dramatic," he said, gesturing toward me. "She was headstrong, rebellious. When discipline didn't work, she turned against me. She's trying to destroy our family." His lies rolled off his tongue like poetry. For years, I had been trapped inside his story, forced to live the version of me he invented. Sitting there, listening to him twist reality, I realized how many people must have believed his script. Rebecca stood. "Mr. Bennett, can you explain why neighbors reported loud disturbances on multiple occasions?" He smirked. "Families argue. That's hardly unusual. And can you explain the medical records showing Clara's injuries?" "They were accidents," he said smoothly. "She was always clumsy." Each answer felt rehearsed, polished. But then Rebecca produced something he hadn't prepared for: photographs. Adrian had taken them, pictures of the bruises, the broken doorframe, the tear-streaked nights I had tried to forget. The mask slipped. Just for a moment, his eyes hardened, and the calm veneer cracked. Judge Doyle noticed. Everyone noticed. Lydia's face went pale. She shifted in her seat, biting her lip. My father reached for her hand, but she hesitated before giving it. That single moment, her hesitations, sparked a small flame of hope in me. By the time court recessed, the air felt different. My father was still defiant, still dangerous, but no longer untouchable. The cracks in his armor were showing. Outside, Adrian placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. "He's losing control," he murmured. "He can't hide who he really is, forever." I wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered like smoke in my chest. My father had always found a way to twist the narrative, to turn people against me. What if the judge couldn't see the truth clearly enough? What if Lydia never broke free from his grip? That night, I sat at Adrian's kitchen table long after everyone had gone to bed. The papers, the photographs, the memories, they all swirled in my head like a storm. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who begged for scraps of love from a man who only knew how to dominate. I thought about Lydia, still caught in his web, unable to see the bars of her cage. And for the first time in years, I thought about a future. Not just surviving the trial, but living beyond it. A life where my father's shadow no longer dictated my every move. The thought was terrifying, but it was also liberating. As dawn crept through the blinds, I whispered to myself, "I'm not his anymore." And for the first time, I almost believed it. The final day in court carried a stillness unlike the others. It was as if the entire room was holding its breath, waiting for a verdict that would either chain me to my father's shadow forever, or finally set me free. Judge Doyle's voice was calm, but firm, as she reviewed the testimonies, the evidence, the photographs that Adrian had preserved. My father sat straight-backed, jaw tight, a man desperately clinging to the illusion of control. Lydia sat beside him, her fingers twitching restlessly in her lap. Then, the moment came. After careful consideration, this court finds sufficient evidence of abuse and coercion. Mr. Bennett, your actions were deliberate, harmful, and manipulative. Custody rights are revoked. Protective orders will be enforced. My breath caught. The words echoed in my chest like a bell ringing across a battlefield. For a second, I couldn't move. Couldn't believe. My father's head snapped toward me, his eyes burning with fury. But for once, his power meant nothing. Lydia burst into tears. She reached for him, then pulled back, shaking her head. For the first time, I saw her see him not the father he pretended to be, but the man he truly was. As the bailiffs escorted him out, his voice rang out. "Clara, you'll regret this. You've destroyed this family." But his threats no longer pierced me. They sounded hollow, weak like the last roar of a dying storm. Rebecca touched my hand. "It's over, over." The word felt unreal. For so long, my life had been defined by fear, by survival. Now, standing in that courtroom, I realized survival wasn't enough anymore. I wanted more. Outside, Adrian wrapped me in his arms. "You did it," he whispered. His voice was steady, but I could feel the tremor in his embrace, the weight of everything we had endured. "I didn't do it alone," I whispered back. The sun was bright that day, almost blinding. It felt symbolic, as though the world itself was trying to remind me that darkness doesn't last forever. Lydia approached, her face streaked with tears. She stopped a few steps away, guilt written across every line of her expression. "Clara, I'm so sorry," she choked out. I should have stood by you." My heart ached. She was as much a victim as I had been, caught in his grip, too afraid to break free. I stepped forward and pulled her into a hug. "We survived." "Him," I said softly. "That's what matters now." She clung to me like the little sister I remembered from years ago, the one who used to sneak into my room on stormy nights. For the first time in so long, I felt hope that maybe we could find our way back to each other. That night, back at Adrian's house, I stood by the window, watching the stars scatter across the sky. My reflection stared back at me, not broken, not defeated, but stronger than I had ever known. For years, my father had stolen my voice, my choices, my sense of self. But in that moment, staring at the vast, endless sky, I knew he couldn't touch me anymore. I was free, and freedom, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all.